purpose of life is to pour our life out to be a blessing to others. Our culture, we have such a capitalistic society. We're blessed to have this sort of Judeo-Christian values that I think have made this country unbelievably successful. But at the same time, we can make success our little g god, and that can lead to not a joyous place. But I always thought, well, maybe I can give more when I have more, maybe financially. I think God plants that seed in us, that the software he's planted in us is that a joyous life is a life poured out for others. If you're not on running that software, you're going to have malware. It's not going to be joyous.
Welcome to the Sock Door Podcast, where life is messy, but we always find meaning in it. Every week, we pull out the stories, the lessons, and the hidden gems. And then we ask the big question, keep it or kick it? If you're ready for real talk, brave steps forward. I'm your host, Lisa Begley, and you're listening to the Sock Door Podcast. Let's jump right in. Hello, Sock Door family. I'm Lisa Begley, and we're back. And today we're talking about money, meaning, and the kind of generosity that actually changes how you live your life. My guest today on this episode is Jeff Thomas, the CEO and founder of Arkos Global Advisors. He has spent, you guys, more than 35 years helping business owners move from that spark of inspiration into purposeful, value-driven action. He's an author, a podcast host, and a leader who believes money is simply a tool, one that works best when it serves something bigger. Jeff, thank you for being here. I'm so glad, and welcome to the Sock Door Podcast family.
Lisa, thanks for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
Yay! Well, good. So listen, I know we were talking offline a little bit, but let's just start kind of from the beginning, if you would. You know, we're all about reinvention and changes and things that people have done. You've been in this industry for 35 years. What's the moment or season that shifted kind of how you think about money and purpose?
I think there were several kind of turning points, but one of them was when I was 31 years old. My wife and we had a little six-year-old daughter, and I had started the wealth management business at a company called Payne Weber that's now been bought by UBS. And I had recently moved the business to clients. You can kind of take them with you, and these firms will pay you some money to transition your business from one firm to the next. And
Sure.
And we took it to Morgan Stanley, and Morgan Stanley handed me a check for $1 million even, okay? And it was a check in 2000.
Oh my God.
I remember the guy handing me this check, and he goes, well, what are you going to do with it? You know, like nobody would hand you a check anymore. Nobody even uses checks. Yeah. But he handed me, and I remember thinking, I have zero plans for it. Like, I don't even have an answer. And I felt a little like the dog who's been chasing the car and caught the car, and now what am I supposed to do with it?
Yeah.
And I know there's plenty of people make more than that, but that was a meaningful amount for me. And it also kind of made me think about money in a different way. It was sort of almost like a lottery check or something, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, wow, this is really strange. I think I've been a little too motivated by, I mean, one of the things I like to say a lot is everybody knows money can't buy happiness, but everybody wants to find out for themselves. So,
that's true. That is truth. Yeah.
So my dad was a business guy who became a pastor. And so I grew up in the church. I knew all these principles. I know that money competes for your heart. I knew all the principles, but I think in my 20s, I was still chasing success, maybe the little G God of success, more than I was chasing the big G actual God. And so that was kind of a moment for me of going, I think maybe I have my priorities a little skewed. And I need to work on that. So that was the first catalyst.
Okay. So many of us, and that makes sense. It was modeled, I would say maybe not early on, but it was more a life teaching that you learned along the way.
Right.
So many of us, and with your dad being a pastor, I'm sure that, do you feel like that sort of played into that a little bit and gave you that sense?
I feel like I knew probably where because if you have a crisis like that of like, maybe I have my priorities wrong, the next obvious question is, well, what should they be? Yeah. And what do I need to do to reorient?
Yeah. for
And so
sure.
I was sort of, at, 31, I was like, well, the answers are probably in the Bible, but do I even believe all that stuff? Because I was sort of always living on my parents' faith. Everybody just sort of assumed I knew everything my dad did, but I
Mm.
didn't go to seminary. I showed up at Sunday school. Anyway, I didn't feel like I really had an amazing grasp of how the whole thing fit together. So I ended up reading all these books on world religions. Like, do I even believe everything that's in the Bible? That sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I ended up coming back. I read The Case for Christ by Lee Strobel. I
Mm.
recommend it to anybody out there who's kind of seeking or wondering about the facts behind Christianity. That study the nerdy term is apologetics. And I don't think he knew that term when he was writing it. But Lee he's a good friend now, but he was a investigative reporter for the Chicago Tribune who was an ardent atheist, and his wife became a believer, and he wanted to get a divorce because he didn't want to go to church. He said, well, before I get a divorce, I'll research Christianity and prove that it's not true to her so that we can both stop going to church. Okay. But then he researched it for 2 years, and then his conclusion was, holy cow, it's true. So he ended up becoming a believer, and so like he
Saving
put
his
all the
marriage,
research
I hope.
in this book. What'd you say?
Saving his marriage.
Exactly.
Amazing.
And
Amazing.
anyway, when I read that book, I was like, wow, this guy's way more skeptical than I was. But all the facts about, anyway, for me, it was plenty of proof that the Bible was true. And now, okay, let me go study it. So I started really studying the Bible through Bible Study Fellowship. It doesn't matter how you do it, but just get in it every day and, really get through it. And I started feeling like God communicating to me, look, you got to put me first. Like, I will solve your problems. The answers are in serving other people. It's not in serving yourself. And I knew that from a, practical standpoint. Growing up in the church, I knew my dad would like sort of serve this flock. But I also knew, like, in business, I would, if you have 100 clients, if you serve them, it like, if you let them get what they want, you kind of get what you want. But I always said, like, I wanted my clients to be first, but, I was kind of right on their heels. I was like, hey,
So good.
it's still the wrong attitude. You can't be right on their heels. Okay.
Yeah.
It's all about serving.
Yeah.
And just out of the outflow of that. So anyway, that led to this whole thing where I was like, we were building plans, financial plans for people. And I think, at the end of the plan, it sort of shows, okay, when you retire, you have this much money. And sort of the de facto principle that we were teaching without saying it out loud is this stack of money is where your safety lies. And it's simply not true.
Yeah.
First of all, it can go poof. God can take it away if he wants to. But our security is really only found in God, and it doesn't
him.
come in the form. So I thought, okay, well, we need to change the way we communicate. So we started telling people, we're really stewards, not owners. That's the kind of language we were using. God owns everything. We're just stewards. What does he want to do with it? Actually, he's got a better plan for us than we have for ourselves. At least that's been true for me. So anyway, we just started having conversations over that decade about, more meaningful conversations about what's the money for, how can you bless others with it, this sort of thing. And so that sort of evolved over the years to where we ended up eventually starting our own company so we could communicate even more freely.
So good. I love that. And your firm, your whole Arkos talks openly about generosity and not as a charity, but more as a mindset. So what does generous living actually look like? Like, what do you share with your clients as they come to you?
Yeah, this is a great question, Lisa. It's actually a very insightful question because when most people think of the word generosity or even stewardship, they think of giving money away. And honestly, that's probably the least important, interestingly, even from a money guy. I mean, we advise people on their money for a living.
Yeah. So tell me more.
There are multiple forms of generosity. The way we talk about it is there's generosity of words, just the way you speak to people. What are the words you choose? Okay. And we can all do that, regardless of how much or how little we have in our bank account. Okay. Time, obviously, time, talent, treasure, those are common. But how do you spend your time? You can volunteer for things. You can just go over and help a friend, or you can just sit there and listen. The thoughts you have, taking captive the thoughts you have about people. Do you think, not judging people, but how could I help them? How could I pray for them? What could I do for people? So what are the thoughts you have? Money, of course, is a way. With your things, you can let people borrow your things. One of the things I think a lot about is I don't want to own anything I wouldn't lend out to someone, which is challenging,
Yeah.
right? Like, is there anything in my possession or that I'm stewarding that I wouldn't lend to someone?
Mm.
Influence. You can use your influence, like the way you're doing this podcast. It gives you influence to share stories with your audience. That's a form of generosity. And then one of my favorites that I'm always working on is just the last form of generosity that we talk about is attention, just listening. A bit of a lost art. And I can be guilty of
I
talking too
agree.
much and not listening enough. And isn't it wonderful to just have somebody sit and listen to you? So anyway, multiple forms of generosity to answer your question.
So good. And I love the listening. I agree with you wholeheartedly about that piece of it for sure. I wrote those down: work, time, thoughts, money, and just listening. I feel like
Right.
we're going to add that in. Why? It's funny. I was going to ask you, why do you think so many business owners feel called to give? But I
Mm.
kind of know the answer to that. I mean, I think if you are feeling called to give, it's because you understand, I don't know what you call it, but you understand that way of, I've
Yeah.
been told numerous times, if if you want, even if you're hit rock bottom, if you are at rock bottom, that's the best time to give back. If you're
Right.
trying to accomplish something, give back first. Or what is your message? If it's for other people, that will come back to you tenfold. So I don't know, do you find many business owners are more and more these days feeling called to give? Or is that
This
something you
is
see more and more?
that really interesting question. There's two things you said there that are really important. I would say the first one is kind of a worldview of there's some kind of pithy quotes about, the two most important days in your life are the day you're born and the day you realize why. We all, remember the Purpose Driven Life book?
Yes.
It sold millions of copies. Rick Warren, of course, wrote that book. And the first line is my favorite line in the book, which is, "It's not about you." So the purpose of life, we all have to get to this place where we realize the purpose of life is to pour our life out to be a blessing to others. We would say as believers, love God, love people. It's really not that complicated. And if you do that, sort of by emptying yourself, your life becomes more joyous as a side effect. You can't have that be the motivation to serve yourself. If you serve God's and then He loves us so much that we serve other people, that's what leads to joy. Okay. And and I think in our culture, and I was absolutely guilty of that and still struggle with it, our culture, we have such a capitalistic society. We're blessed to have this sort of Judeo-Christian values, okay, that I think have made this country unbelievably successful. But at the same time, we can make success our little g God, the way I did in my 20s. And that can lead to not a joyous place. But I always thought, well, maybe I can give more when I have more, maybe financially. And so kind of what I think the first point you're making is a worldview that, I think God plants that seed in us, that the software He's planted in us is that a joyous life is a life poured out for others. If you're not on that, running that software, you're going to have malware. It's not going to be joyous. So that's why He plants that seed of generosity in all of us. And all I'm trying to do, my little cause, is to water that seed in my little way, however I can do that, okay, with our company, with the podcast we do called The Generous Business Owner, all of those things. We're just trying to water that seed. And just this week, I did an interview with somebody, and at the end of our podcast, we always say, just what's a practical tip for somebody on your journey? And they said basically what you just said, which is don't wait to start. No matter how small, do something. Buy coffee for the person in front of you. If you like the blouse somebody's wearing and you don't know them and they're in line in front of you, just say, "Hey, I love your." I mean, it doesn't have to be some grand gesture or $1 million that you're giving away.
Yeah.
How do you use those forms of generosity we talked about just a little more intentionally today? And hey, maybe write it down. I had to do that. When I started changing my behavior, I had a little journal and I'd okay, bring up meaningful things beyond money, and I do it for 30 days. And I get so proud of myself for bringing it up, so compliment somebody in line that you have no idea. Buy a little coffee for them. Just do small acts of generosity and build the muscle.
Yeah.
It doesn't take a lot of money. Don't wait. Do something.
Build the muscle. I love that. And it's so true. Like how many I remember being in line myself once and just being flabbergasted. Is that even a word these days? I don't know, but
Yes, it is.
just completely taken back as I pulled up to get my coffee order and the person in front of me had paid for it. And I was like, and immediately I was trying to think like, what did I do?
What
What
can
did
I
I do
do?
to deserve that? Or,
Exactly.
what did I do to deserve it? And okay, let's talk about paying it forward. So the next time I went through a Starbucks line,
Right.
I did the same thing, and you
Love it.
never, I think people are afraid. What do you think, business owners feel like? What's their struggle to just take first step, the first step they need to take? Why do you think that
Yeah, no, I
is a
think it's,
struggle?
well, let me give an example. 20 years ago, I went to this conference and it was called Generous Giving, so it should have been a clue. But it was like in the fourth quarters around this time of year. And, my wife and I were trying to give more money. And we literally had this little chart that the church had given us where you like step up, like you give like 1% more every year. Okay. And we were just all, kind of working on that and taking our little baby steps. And then I heard the story of a guy who's become a good friend and helped me start the podcast called Alan Barnhart. And Alan, he's in his 60s today, but 40 years ago, he took over the little family business. He was getting out of college, just got married. And his parents had like two little cranes that they would like rent out for construction from their house. I mean, it was a tiny business. And so he and his brother decided to take over the family business. But his wife his new wife, she wanted to go into the mission field. All right. And so they had this little, the vote was 1-1. Do we take over the business or, go to the mission field? And their compromise was that they said, we'll set our salary at what the mission board would pay us, but and if God blesses the business and we make more than that, we'll give it away. That was their compromise. Okay. So the first year, this is 40 years ago, they made $50,000 more than they paid themselves. And that's pretty amazing for some young 20s,
Yeah.
Well, they've kept doing this, Lisa, for 40 years. And the company is now pushing $1 billion in revenue. It's the fourth largest crane and rigging company in America. And they still do the same thing. And they gave away tens of millions of dollars. Alan looks at money as really a risk factor. He doesn't want it to touch him. It's a tool for him for generosity. So now they have at the company 6 committees in 6 different regions of the world giving all this money away. All these people get to travel the globe to see the good. Anyway, I'm hearing about this 20 years ago, and I've just got my little chart, right? I needed to hear his story to break my paradigm of what was possible. I'm not doing the exact same thing. I pay myself more money than he does. And God is not, we don't want to be prescriptive to tell
Right.
people what to do.
Yeah.
Each of us are made in God's image with a unique path, as Ephesians 2:10. He's got good works for us to do. They're unique to us.
Yeah.
So what he tells Alan to do is not the same for me, but I learned a lot about that paradigm, what is possible. So I think that's why I'm so driven to tell these stories every week of other people that are doing it. How is God leading them to do it? We just want to break the paradigm of, well, I just do it like everybody else. And if I make this much, then I buy the plane. And then, then you got to buy the second house and the third house and the fourth car and the ranch and the lake house. And the next thing you know, all your possessions own you. Well, what are you supposed to do? I don't know anybody who does anything different. We're just trying to tell stories. So we think there's a wide path, the path that I was on in my 20s.
Yeah.
That leads to just consumption. I mean, you can only drive so many cars, live in so many houses. I mean, the plane seat's the same. I mean, okay. Or the narrow path to this generous living. For some reason, well, we do have an enemy in this world, but we in our flesh, we want to consume and be selfish, and we need to be taught to be generous, which leads to joy. So for me, I don't like to be told what to do. Most business owners are hard-headed. They're crazy enough to start a company to do their own thing.
Yeah.
Usually with larger competitors, you got to be a little bit crazy and hard-headed to go for it.
To be
So
yes.
I like to learn from stories.
Yeah.
And so that's what we primarily do. I always tell people, I don't actually know anything. I just know 1,000 stories. So I think that's the way that we try to help people is to normalize this kind of generous behavior.
Love it. Do one more favor for me on the story end of things. So have you on a smaller scale, that's a big scale, but have you witnessed a moment in your life, and I'm sure you have, where generosity reshaped a person or a family's life?
Well, we have a client who is in his 70s and he's got 3 kids, 2 daughters and a son. They're in their 40s. And the client wanted to redo his estate plan, not uncommon for us to kind of walk people through that. But he was at odds with his son. They weren't speaking. And he's like, how do I tell him I'm going to cut him out of the will? And we're like, whoa, time out. And what we ended up doing, we had a brilliant woman named Sarah on our team who put together a little family meeting. And this is where we talk about, has nothing to do with money. It only has to do with the other things we talked about, words, thoughts, okay, a little bit of time. She had each of the parents write a letter of blessing to each of the children in their 40s. Okay. I mean, they're adults. Some of them have kids. And so rather than having a meeting about here's how I'm going to cut you out of the will, the meeting was about reading those blessing letters to those kids, even on Zoom, because they're in different parts of the country. They couldn't even be in the same room together. And now the parents didn't have to do this. Mom was fine with it, but dad did. To his eternal credit, he sat down and wrote that letter to his son, who needed to hear it in his 40s. And that led to this reconciliation in that family that is just beautiful to watch. So we got to get out of our own way.
Yeah.
And think more generously toward our neighbor, even the ones, our family. We're coming into Christmas as we're recording this. Maybe we release it afterwards, but it doesn't matter what season it's in. Family can be the hardest sometimes. There's conflict and history there. And how do we move past the offenses and think generously? And then with everybody around us. So just it has so little to do with money. It really has to do with the heart position,
Yeah. It's funny. You've touched on I've talked with several people in, kind of in the financial realm and different aspects of it throughout my last several months. And there seems to be a common theme happening. And that is, I bet almost every time I have a podcast or an interview, and they'll say, I'm not a therapist, but you have to be, or you have to learn, right? I'm not a therapist, but, and that was the first thought that came to my mind when you said that. I was like, well, we're not therapists. You're gonna have to figure that out, and it's not, you're not, but you are kind of, in the way that what a blessing to not have to live with that potential regret or those negative thoughts that kind of hover over you, because I think as well as I do, right? If they were to have done that, gone through with that, cut him out of the will, there's going to be that kind of little angel sitting on your shoulder that says, really, is that where we're at? Someone who's kind of nagging at you. So that's just beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Now, through stewardship with your company, like when someone comes to you and feels overwhelmed, like talking to our listeners today, feeling overwhelmed financially, what do you recommend as a first step? Where do they begin?
I mean, just in full disclosure, the niche we serve tends to be overwhelmed with too much, to be honest with you. And in our society, it's an interesting niche because most people think that if you got a bunch of money, you have no problems.
You're good, right? Yeah.
More money, more problems. It is actually a thing.
One of my favorite tunes.
So, there is, there's a reason in the Bible, the line about you can only serve one master. It's God or money. And then the whole thing about a rich man, it's easier for a camel to get through an eye of a needle for a rich man to get to heaven. Yeah. Money competes for our heart. So if you have a lot, there are a lot of barriers between you and purpose, because there is a temptation to rely on our resources. Now, if you have too little, one of the things I think about is our definition of too little is a little wacky in this country.
Okay.
The median income in this country, somewhere maybe, in the $70,000 range for a household. Okay. Well, that puts you in the top 1% of the globe. Okay. So maybe you have too much credit card debt or, debt from school or whatever.
Right.
But, this is more Dave Ramsey's world than mine, but there's a way out. You probably don't need the new F-150 with the, $700 a month payment. Usually we have put ourselves in these situations.
Yeah.
And I think perspective on how most of the world operates, it's okay to cut your budget. And I think a lot of these things is you just want things that other people have and these sort of things. And so there's just a biblical principle of being satisfied. Even wealthy people, and nobody thinks they're wealthy. They think whoever has got 2 times what they have is wealthy. Okay, the person with 100,000 thinks the person with 200,000 is wealthy. We had some mission folks that were talking about, they went to Africa, this little village, and they said, oh, we're going to be smart. We're going to ask the villagers, what do they need? Before we just presume they need things.
Yeah.
And so they went to one of these chiefs and they said, what's the biggest problem in your village? And he goes, materialism. And we're like, you're on dirt floors with like thatch roof. Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
He goes, well, the guy with 1 chicken is jealous of the guy with 2 chickens. The guy with 2 chickens is jealous of the guy with the goat. The guy with the goat's jealous of the guy with the cow. The guy with the cow is jealous of the guy with the 2. You got to run your own race. And what we think are giant financial problems usually aren't. They're usually spending problems. And we're just trying to do things to keep up with the Joneses, and the Joneses don't care. So anyway,
Yeah.
we don't do a lot of that sort of financial counseling, but I think we make these problems bigger than they are.
It sounds like it. And that's so true, honestly.
Yeah.
Like, I want to ask the question, like, I know this isn't this type of a podcast, but when did jealousy, like, is that just an automatic, are we all born with that sort of characteristic?
Yeah, it's in the top 10.
Trait, right?
This is a 10 Commandments issue.
Yeah.
Coveting your neighbor's stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
he hit that right up front. He knows this is one of
Because
the.
he knew we were all going to be this way at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the human condition, and we have to come back to him, and we
Yeah.
have to learn to. I mean, I got 3 grandsons. I remember how I was as a kid. I remember how our
Yeah.
kids were. They're born selfish.
Yeah.
You're always shocked when they want to share their toys. The shocking behavior is when they share, and you usually had to teach them.
Yeah.
The non-shocking
true.
is,
Yeah.
I want my brother's, dessert as well as my own, and I don't want to
Yeah.
share my toys.
Ugh.
And I want to win.
Yes.
Me.
All the time.
I want to win, and I'll cheat at
Interesting.
cards to win.
Yeah.
You have to play fairly. Those things have to be taught,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and that's why the stories and the principles and all those kind of things are so important.
I know. I agree with that. It's almost like in that same line, like those things are taught, but I always think of it as like the other is taught. Being selfish, being greedy, being coveting other people's stuff,
Yeah.
being envious or whatever. You make such a great point. It's a top 10 in the Bible, so he knew we were all going to have this struggle and be born with this and going to be need to be taught out of it.
Exactly.
You know,
Exactly.
so
Everything was
that's
perfect
crazy.
in the garden. Adam and Eve screwed it up. We're all screwed up. We're all their kids. And it's going to come back. But meanwhile, while we're
But in
waiting
the
for Jesus
meantime-
to come back and make the garden perfect again,
Yeah.
we got to learn and do better.
Oh gosh. So much. Do better. I say that to my kids and grandkids all the time. Just do better. Be better. So listen, you've seen hundreds of people, right, reinvent themselves, reinvent their
Mhm.
financial lives. What do you think separates the ones who actually change from the ones who continue to stay stuck? What is it? Is it a mindset thing? Is it, is it just character? What is it?
Okay, so just from my perspective, my little world where people are generally retiring or selling their companies, we were talking before we started recording about we deal with a lot of families who are selling their companies. And then now, what do we do? What are other people? So the number one question we get is, what do other people like me do? I just sold the family business, okay? And that's a big question. How do I help the kids thrive? How can these resources maybe be a tailwind, not a headwind? The other thing, what do I do with my time? I mean, I had a job to go to. Now I don't. There is a reinvention, and you were talking about the word retiring, and we always say, when we talk about retiring, we're like re-dash tire, like put new tread on the tires.
I love
Like,
it. Yeah.
You cannot, this is another kind of lie from the enemy and this is a Bible story too. There's the rich fool who's like, okay, I had a big crop. I'm going to build bigger barns and just stuff it in the barns, and I'm going to have a party. I'm going to retire. Okay. And what's the parable about? It's about, look, the moths are going to eat it. You're not going to have those resources. And that's not how you're supposed to behave. You got to keep working and blessing others. Okay. So the key for the people we're working with is, how do you find a new cause? What are the things that God has breaking your heart for. So I would say, for some people, it's helping kids get from A to B. For some people, it's helping prisoners become better citizens when they get out, by preparing them when they're in or whatever. For some people, it's helping the elderly. It's poverty. It's whatever cause. What is the thing that breaks your heart? And pour your life into that thing. And then take an inventory of what the skills are that you're good at. Are you good at leadership? Are you good at strategy? Are you good at just the hands-on dealing with people, the counseling yourself? What is it? And it has very little to do with money again, that really turns your clock. It's always helping someone else. So do little low-cost probes to find out what those things are, but don't buy into this. You don't have to do things for money if you have enough money, but you do have to keep the motor running. We're supposed to be doing something productive.
Yeah.
And that productivity has to be in blessing others. So the people we see make the best transitions are the ones who are already doing something besides their job. They already had a passion, and when they have more time, they just have more time to pour into that passion. Halftime's an organization that often does a lot of this coaching that we've found to be productive, to kind of find a peer group and get through that coaching. And I know you do some coaching as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So I want to ask this question, and then I want you to tell me a little bit more about Arkos and
Sure.
give us a little bit more insight on that. So what's one decision, if you just speaking to the listeners today, what is one decision someone can make today that their future self will thank them for?
Yeah, I mean, the thing that transformed me for me was really owning my faith for myself, which was just kind of deep study of the Bible with other people. And that would be a first step. And then once you kind of have that baseline going where you've really kind of got your principles down, as somebody famous once says, purpose leaks. Okay. I have to keep renewing my bucket of purpose and motivation for it. So for me, the most important part of the day is sort of my quiet time in the morning, even if you have 15 minutes. And if you can do an hour, great. But sometimes it's 5 minutes. But if you can just do a little something in the morning to reset. For me, it's reading a little scripture, usually a little devotional. Maybe it's a book that's inspirational, and doing some prayer. And it's just amazing how my blood pressure falls about all the things I've got to do that day, and my performance anxiety about all the to-do list and all of those, and getting on just back on the right agenda to just serve people. I always say, get in a framework and a mindset of obedience and not outcome, because I'm very outcome driven in my flesh. So if I can lay that down, give all those worries to God, and then just be about being obedient, and usually that's about serving other people, things tend to go a lot better. So for me, it's that daily routine of sort of letting those things go and getting my mindset ready.
That is so good. And, I think we talked about this ahead of time, but at the end of our episode, we typically have what I call the tiny dare, right? And I always ask our guests to give our listeners one challenge, one tiny thing they can do in their day and I think you just did it. That's all I'm saying. So I think that's it. If you can just take 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, a half hour. If you have an hour, great. But most of us don't. So take that 5 minutes, take that 15 minutes every morning.
And it's just like working out physically.
Yes.
This is the mindset workout.
Yes.
And what does everybody say, including me? I don't have time. We have time for everything we prioritize.
That's right.
So for me, this is the most important thing, even above the physical exercise. Try to make time for that as well. You have to. There's all kind of disciplines that we need to do. But for me, the most important is that level set in the morning. Just get up 5 minutes earlier, and then make it 10, and then make it 15, and maybe you can get to 30. And if you want to go beyond that, good for you.
Yeah.
But if you can it means going to bed earlier. It means watching one
less show
less. Okay. You don't do 3 of them, you do 2 of them. Like we know would be the challenge, is just carve out that time and watch the transformation. It's just completely transformed my life.
Yeah. That is so good. The value, you can't even express the value in it. It's just good. When I do that now as well, Jeff and I couldn't be without it. That's my day.
I'm a mess without it.
Yes.
And then I get all these great ideas while it's happening. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Okay. So tell me a little bit more, kind of give us a 30,000 foot overview of Arkos, what you do, how people can find you, and you go.
So Arkos arkosglobal.com.
Yeah.
We started the company 9 years ago after 25 years at these big firms. Last stop, Morgan Stanley for 17 years before that. I had started a Christian focus group at Morgan Stanley. We got up to about 600 members. I was running like a monthly study group, and God had given us a vision for really following his principles in wealth management. But it just got to a point where the things we wanted to do for families, like this thing about these letters of blessing, having family meetings. The older firms are generally really good at the investment management or like to talk about that more. We think we're good at that, but we wanted to do more comprehensive services for clients. And really the way we look at it is they're hiring us not as a person to just manage their money, but like a COO of the balance sheet. And so we always say, if you recognize that God is the owner, that you and your spouse, if you're married, are the CEOs, the chief stewards, if you will.
Yeah.
We think you generally, if you have some resources, need somebody aligned in the financial world, aligned with your principles, but also knowledgeable about how to execute and create the buckets you need.
Yeah.
And obviously the philanthropic planning is a big part for us. So we know all the tax rules and how to do those things. And so one of our principles is disinherit the IRS. So our tax code in America is amazingly generous to generous people, but very few people know all those rules. So that's a big part of what we do. We just come alongside these families and execute. Arkos is a combination of the word ark, like Noah's Ark, like download crazy plans from God.
Love
And
that.
telos, which is finish your purpose, is what Jesus said on the cross. My purpose is finished. So we mash those together for a safe place to finish your purpose. So we say download crazy plans from God that generally have generosity involved, and let's go execute together. So it's just a place that we can do that with biblical principles without having to kind of fight City Hall with a culture that doesn't really agree with our worldview, and to deliver services more comprehensively to families to live those things out. So that's kind of our mission.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. Arkos Global Advisors, build on purpose, connect your money with your purpose, steward wealth across generations. You can reach them, right? There's a team. You can reach them at their website. It's not just local, it's across the country, across the world. They can help anybody. So, if you're so inclined, reach out to them. We'll also have that link in the show notes for you. And, Jeff, if we could have just a little bit of fun right now on transitioning over to our 60-second drawer dash. It's just a fun lightning round where I just kind of throw some questions at you, say the first thing that comes to your minds. Some align and some don't. So I'm just going to throw it out. Just tell me. All right. Tell me when you're ready.
Fire away.
Let's go. Morning person or night owl?
Morning person.
Okay. A book that truly changed how you think.
Yeah. Case for Christ. I mentioned it earlier.
Case for Christ. And who wrote that?
Lee Strobel.
All right. We could probably tag that in the show notes as well. What's your go-to coffee order?
Coffee order, Americano black.
Nice. A moment of generosity you'll never forget.
Moment of generosity. I think that story about the guy writing the blessing letter to his son, even though it's not me, we had something to do with that. It's just beautiful, the little things.
I agree. Best advice you ever received?
Love God, love people.
A word you hope people use to describe you?
I hope they think I'm generous.
Something you learned about leadership the hard way? There's probably a story.
Be a servant.
Here. Yeah.
Being a servant.
Being a servant. A simple joy you don't take for granted.
Health. I mean, just being able to move and have all your faculties. We're not guaranteed that.
True. A habit you swear by. I think I might know this one, but a habit you swear by.
Yeah, the quiet time in the morning. Secret weapon.
And the last one, and the classic. What's the one thing you finally let go of this year?
It's a constant process. For me, I'm an old singles tennis player.
Okay.
Life is
that.
a team. Life is a team sport. So the sooner you let go of thinking life is a individual match, and the more you embrace team, the better everything goes, at least for me.
My gosh, no, Jeff, I love that for everybody. Yeah. Life is a team sport. I think I'm going to start using that as like a tagline or
that's
something.
One of our principles. Yeah.
I'm going to tell my kids that too. So listen, Jeff, oh my gosh, I feel like we could just go on talking forever. Thank you so much. You bring in the clarity, bringing heart, grounded wisdom, letting us talk about God. It's just it's glorious. And I've really enjoyed it. Your grounded wisdom, I guess, is going to help so many people, already has. And I think that when I meet somebody who has such grounded wisdom, carry it silently, but I'm glad that you're bringing it to the surface. You reminded us that reinvention, it doesn't just live in our emotions. It definitely lives in, we align our money with who we actually want to be.
Exactly.
So friends, take that tiny dare of that 5, 10, 15 minutes in the morning. Start your day off right. Start small. Start today. And as always, just take one brave step towards something good today. All right? See you later. All right, Sock Drawer family, that's a wrap on today's Drawer Dump. Big thanks to our guests for sharing their story and their heart with us. Until next time. Don't forget, life's too short for mismatched socks. Retire the ones with holes, inspire the ones that still shine. See you soon.